This is the Modern Motherhood Podcast, and I'm Julie Lyles Carr. Next to laundry, getting meals on the table in some kind of consistent manner for the family is one of my biggest challenges each week. The groceries, the planning, all the things. No wonder I'm often wanting to pick up pizza on the way home from work or tempted to serve microwave popcorn as the main dish. Well, Tiffany King is my guest today, and she's going to help us get ahead of the dinner time crunch. So, Tiffany, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I have 4 kids and 2 kids-in-law. So my oldest 2 kids are married now, and a husband of 30 years. So we've been at this family dinner thing for a while now. My oldest is 26, and we still have a 15-year-old here at the house. So we're not quite empty nesters yet. We're still on the go in those busy teen years. Yeah, and I blog at eatathomecooks.com, where I started that site back in 2008. Focus on weeknight dinners. That's kind of me in a nutshell.
How did this become a passion of yours?
Well, the passion part comes from, I do enjoy cooking, but weeknight cooking is not the same as getting in and experimenting in the kitchen, usually, because you don't have a lot of time for that on a weeknight. Right. So over the years of, cooking with babies in the house, and then toddlers, and then preschoolers who want to help, and then once you start getting busy with after school activities and teens who may be working, things can get crazy. And I just learned how to do a lot of shortcuts to get dinner on the table and still make it good and still make sure that we were gathering around the table. And then since my kids are older, we've seen the payoffs of that as they've started their own families, and the 2 oldest being married, they've carried on this dinner tradition with their new spouses.
That's beautiful that you've been able to set a legacy in place while you were just trying to get kids fed. So I think that
right.
helps paint a little bit more of why it's important and what it's about. Now, women have so much on them these days with work and side hustles and kids and house and all the rest. So how do we make family meals and prep time seem like not just one more thing to do on my house is already an endless to-do list, but make it something that we want to engage in and seems conquerable?
Exactly. Yeah. The great thing about dinner, as opposed to laundry or cleaning or some of those other tasks that need to be done for our family, is there's an enjoyable aspect to it. Okay, maybe some people do like cleaning.
Yeah. I've heard there are those type out there. Yeah, it's kind of like Bigfoot. I mean, here's my problem, Tiffany. I always seem to have the luck of making friends with the people whose houses actually always are clean. And then I develop a complex. I think I'm drawn to it like a moth to the flame, not realizing that the flame is going to scorch my comparison button again. But yeah, I always seem to have at least 2 or 3 friends who their house is always clean, and they actually seem to enjoy cleaning. And thankfully, a couple times they've actually come over and helped me clean my disaster. So I guess there's an upside.
That's a good friend.
Yeah. But I'm with you. I totally understand the what sometimes feels like the monotony and the futility of laundry and cleaning. So tell us how prepping for family meal can be different.
Yeah. So dinner is different because you're actually accomplishing quite a few things in that dinner hour. So you're getting to focus on your family around the table. You can catch up. We move so fast in our lives, but dinner's a time we can put the screens away, put the phones away, and we can look each other in the eye and actually talk to each other about things. It's not a great time to bring up a tense subject because, you do want it to be a good experience. But it's such a good time to gather together for that. Then you're also feeding your family and yourself. We all like to eat. You can focus on healthier eating than if you were driving through a fast food. Pretty much anything that you make at home, even if you're using some processed ingredients, is going to be healthier than if you're going through fast food.
And what are some of the trends that you're noticing today when it comes to food, health, family? Between Pinterest and blogs and all these various points that we now have digitally, it's kind of a completely new world than, for example, when I first got married, and you better make sure that you had the, however many recipes on file from mom and grandmom. So what are some of those things that you're noticing?
Yeah, people are very interested in the Instant Pot, and sheet pan dinners too are really big. The reason is because they're time saving. That the biggest trends I see are time saving. And one of those things that you can do if you're a busy mom and to make this task easier when you're doing it day in and day out is to use those shortcuts and use the appliances to your advantage. And the way you do that is match your recipe to the type of day you're having. So if you are going to be out of the house all day, it's probably not a great time to come home and make a dinner that is going to take you 45 minutes. You know, if you're coming in at 6, 6:30, 7 o'clock, you need something that you can have on the table fast. So find yourself a 15-minute recipe or load your slow cooker in the morning with a recipe that can handle that long cooking time. It's essential to match the type of recipe that you're using to your day. That's kind of what hangs us up a lot, I think.
No, I think you're so right, because I do find myself, I love cooking shows. Okay, confession, I love Chef's Table. I just think it's amazing. You know, if you haven't seen it, it's a series that's on, I think, Netflix, and it is just cooking as artistry, but it puts this really weird pressure on me that if I'm not having some kind of sous chef moment where I'm chopping things so precisely and perfectly, and then I'm sauteing this, but then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to blanch this, and on it, I have almost made the prep time so complex in what I think I should be doing versus just focusing on the outcome, which is to get the family around the table for a healthy meal. So how do we overcome what I think we're fighting a lot these days in our lives, that comparison thing where we're looking at the beautifully styled Pinterest board of somebody and either feeling defeated before we start or making it way harder than it has to be? Exactly what you're speaking about, really taking a look at what our day is and making sure that we're not trying to put in a 2.5 hour major gourmet chef moment when the day's packed from end to end.
Exactly. Yeah. There's just, for weeknight dinner, you do have to alter your expectations, because unless you have a special life that most of us don't have, you're not going to be making a gourmet meal every night. There's just too many things that you're trying to pack into a day. That doesn't mean that it can't be healthy. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be good. It just means it's going to be a different kind of recipe. So maybe you're using a recipe you can get on the table in 15 minutes, but you're using chicken that you've previously cooked and frozen, or rotisserie chicken that you swung by the store and picked up, so that you didn't have to actually cook the meat. Getting your recipe to that point, starting at that point, is what's going to keep the cook time and the prep time down short. So it's just finding recipes, and that's what I've hopefully filled this cookbook with, things that will solve those problems. If you only have 15 minutes, if you're going to be out of the house all day, if your pantry is about empty, what are you going to make? Those kinds of things that we all deal with.
Right. Awesome. Now, I love my Instant Pot. I thought, oh, really? I've had these crock pots. I've got a crock pot of my grandmother's that, of course, after recent events on popular TV shows, I've wondered if I should still be keeping that one around. It's been around a long time. And I've got a couple more crock pots because for a tribe my size, it takes a couple. But I thought, oh, is really an Instant Pot going to be that much an advantage over these other slow cookers that I have? Tiffany, I'm deeply, deeply in love with my Instant Pot. And maybe I don't think I'm the only one out there, but what do you find about the Instant Pot? And this is not a commercial for Instant Pots. We're not being compensated for Instant Pots. But if you've been wondering what that train is and if you should get on it, what are you finding about Instant Pots that are kind of changing the slow cooker game?
Yeah, you're definitely not the only one who is in love with the Instant Pot. I have 2 pressure cookers. I have an Instant Pot, and I also have a Cuisinart that I bought several years ago. I actually bought the Instant Pot because I was going to write a blog post about how you don't need one. And I thought I probably should try this out a few more times before I, write this post. And I just fell in love with it. So yeah, it's fantastic. The thing about the Instant Pot that you read so much online is you can have your dinner in 10 minutes or 2 minutes, or that's not really the case.
Right.
It is going to take you, even the very fastest recipes are going to take 20 to 30 minutes, depending on what you're making, because you have to get the pot up to pressure. before you start down with that cook time, which maybe you programmed it for 12 minutes, but it's still got to come up to pressure, do the cooking. So it takes a little bit of time.
Right. And I think people need to be aware of that because it is very, very fast and it does make lovely boiled eggs and your chicken will never shred more beautifully.
Yes.
But it is that science of getting it up to pressure. And I think sometimes we don't anticipate that. So actual cook time, yeah, as advertised. Getting it up to pressure is going to take a little longer. But it's still pretty fast based on, what we usually experience. So
it's very fast. And the other thing about it is for a lot of meats, you don't have to thaw them,
right.
Which I know for a lot of us, we forget to do that step. And so then you're stuck with, if you're staring down frozen chicken breast at the end of the day, that gets kind of hard to think, oh, I'm really going to pull this cooking thing off. But with the Instant Pot, it makes it really easy. You can put the frozen chicken tenders is what I usually use, still frozen, put them in there, and in 30 minutes you can have a meal. But it's like a 5-minute prep time. So you put your ingredients in just like a slow cooker, and then you can go do whatever else you need to do.
Right. Now, you also talked about sheet pan cooking. I know that's something that we've been up to around here for quite a while as well. So what are some of the things you're seeing with that? And can you describe what that is if somebody's going, okay, what are they talking? Instant pots and pressure and sheet pan cooking? What on earth? So tell us what sheet pan cooking is and what some of the advantages of that are as well.
Yeah, the sheet pan is to just use a big sheet pan or cookie sheet, with the one that has a little bit of a rim on it so that you don't end up with an oven full of cooking juices. That would be a mess. And then you put your meat on there and your vegetables. Depending on what you're cooking, you may have to kind of time it, like let the meat go for a little while, then add some of the other vegetables. But you can do any kind of vegetable that you put on a sheet pan and roast is going to be delicious. Just toss it with some olive oil, salt and pepper, any kind of seasoning you want, and spread it out in a single layer on the pan is so good. And to reduce the cleanup time, you can line your pan with either foil or parchment paper, and then it's just really easy to clean up too. So another step saved.
And that's one thing that I definitely have been considering because I also found that when I would put in the effort to try to get that family to the table and with the meal and all the things after work and all the running and all the kids' activities, sometimes some of the things I was making were creating a cleanup moment on the backside.
That can happen.
Yeah, just made me want to sit down and cry. So what are some of your tips for trying to make sure that in all of this effort to get everybody to the table, you're not creating chaos on the other side that sort of steals that good mood that you created being at the table together?
I would love to say that you can avoid cleanup altogether, but that's not realistic, unfortunately. Right. But lining the pans, either the sheet pan, if you hate to scrub out a slow cooker, go ahead and buy the slow cooker liners. It does make it easier. And a slow cooker recipe can be super convenient if you have 5 or 10 minutes to load that in the morning and you can come home to soup or chili or meat, whatever it is that you've put in there. But if you really, truly hate scrubbing the pan, the slow cooker liners are fantastic. But generally, any dish that you can get pretty much everything in one pan, one pot, is going to save your dishes because you just have the one thing. You don't have lots and lots of things to clean up.
Right. And, we've even gone to, and again, I realize my supersized tribe is a little bit of an outlier, but we've even gone to using some of the foil foil pans that you would typically use over, a burner or something like that for a catering event. I finally went, now, wait a minute. If these people are bringing this great food in these kind of containers, and I could do that at home. So we've gone to a lot of that. I unabashedly, yes, I'm using paper plates. And before you raise your ecology flag, and I understand why you are, but the amount of water it takes even to just wash the dishes that my family creates, it's a trade-off. It's a trade-off, and I get that. But we do use some of those little things along the way to help us out because, we all get a little grumpy about the cleanup. So what are some ideas for families like mine where, you're in that season of life, you've got 2 long launched. You've got 2 still at home and still doing all the activities. We are in a similar vein, and we are so busy almost every weeknight, which I know I hate to say as we're sitting here talking about family dinners, but I'm just trying to tell you the truth, Tiffany, that a lot of us are not back to the house until late in the evening after rehearsals and practices. So, how can we leverage the benefits of family meals when our real lives might run by a different clock than everybody to the table at 6 p.m.?
Yeah, that happens as the kids get older and they're involved in things, and you have sports practice. It is hard to get everybody to the table. And what I finally came to the conclusion for our family is we get the people who can be there, as many as we can to the table. So there may be 2 people at the table. There may be 8 people at the table, depending on the night, and who all's come and what friends got invited. It's okay. It's okay to have dinner with just a couple of people. It's okay to have dinner by yourself and enjoy your book. I do have a chapter on eating in shifts. Certain meals lend themselves better to older kids coming in and heating up their own leftovers. If there's too many sides, too many things to put together, a teen may not be into that. But there's certain kinds of things that work really well for eating in shifts that either hold over well in a crock pot or they're just easy to grab out of the refrigerator. Those things are great for if you can't be all at the table at one time.
Yeah, one thing we've used, and I had to laugh at myself because I thought maybe this is really what #adulting really looks like. I got so excited because I bought, this sounds so old school, but these warming trays that our moms used to have in their buffets in the formal dining room that you only ate in once. And they had these separate containers, and I've got 2 of them now. I was all jazzed about it. And so I'll oftentimes, if several of us have been able to gather for a family meal, then I'll just decant whatever is left over into that. And so the kids that get home at 9:30, 10, whatever it is after rehearsals, they can actually then go and the food's still hot and they can just serve themselves from there. And so, I was really jazzed about my compartmentalized warming trays.
That is pretty awesome. That's a great idea. And I'm sure you've discovered the Instant Pot will switch over to that keep warm setting after the time is over. And that is such a wonderful thing.
That's got magic to it too. That's right. Yes. It sure does. I'll be back in just a minute with Tiffany. I've just got to take a minute and introduce you to our content coordinator, Rebecca Beckett, and our producer, Donna Tody. Rebecca is married to Kyle and is a mom to 2 kiddos. She leads our team for All Mom Does, a fantastic community, website, and social presence for moms in all walks and seasons of life. And Donna, a mom of 2 adult kids and a wife, is this genius of a producer, carefully listening and editing and crafting each and every episode of the Modern Motherhood Podcast just for you. It really does take a team to put out this much content every week, both through allmomdoes.com and the podcast. And it takes a team to let others know about the encouragement, inspiration, and tools we hope you found here. I'd like to ask you to take just a minute to make sure you've subscribed to the podcast. It helps you out because it means that the podcast will come to your phone or inbox each week, depending on where you like to get your podcasts. And while you're there subscribing, please leave us a 5-star rating and a review. I'd love to feature your review on an upcoming episode. Thanks so much for being part of the Modern Motherhood Podcast team by helping us get out the word about the podcast. Well, in your beautiful new book, Eat at Home Tonight, which is coming out, and it's just chock full of great ideas and recipes. And one thing that I really love, Tiffany, is you're not only providing recipes, you're giving the whole why behind why this is important, why we come to the table, and what are some troubleshooting things that we can do to try to make those moments, come to pass. And so you say that a family meal can speak to all 5 love languages. Now, I got to tell you, I've always felt like there should be 7 love languages. No offense to the love languages, but because I also think that food and laughter should be part of the love languages, which would take us up to 7. But unpack for us how a family meal can speak to all the 5 love languages that have been outlined in that beautiful book.
Well, I love adding food and laughter both to that. That's fantastic. So quality time is one of the love languages. And obviously, if we're spending time together around the table, that hits that quality time where we can really look each other in the eye and have a conversation. Words of affirmation is another one. So if you have someone in your family with that love language, it's just really easy and natural to speak words of affirmation into each other's lives around the table as we affirm what's gone on in the day, accomplishments that they've made, the ways they've handled things. All of that is just easy to do around the table. Physical touch, we're close proximity, so offering somebody a hug or a pat on the shoulder as you pass by, that's easy. As we hold hands around the table to pray, that's also physical touch. And acts of service is just making the dinner, setting the table, doing the dishes, all of those things. And if you've got a child who has that as their love language, that might be the one that you can rely on to help you in the kitchen as well. Right, because they will show you love by doing acts of service. And then gifts is the last one. And this one is a little bit more of a stretch. But it is a gift to somebody if you make a special dish, a special recipe, maybe a dessert that they really love. That's a gift for that person. So I think no matter what your love language, it's going to be hit during dinner time, which just goes back to, I know we're all busy, but we get so much out of that time of dinner. It just serves so many purposes in our lives. It's got a really big payoff for our families.
So it has all this ability to be this great place of warmth and home and really making people feel seen and known. And I know that some of our biggest parenting conflict moments at times have happened when we sat down at the table for a meal because that kid's not using the right manners, or that one pushed his brother, or that one did this, or that one did that. So how can we avoid making the table contentious while at the same time not just letting it be a free-for-all? So where is that balance in making sure that it feels like love and warmth and home, and not letting our kids get away with horrible manners, but not making it a situation where everybody feels, like there's a lot of conflict?
Honestly, I'm not sure that you can 100% avoid that, because we're families, we're living closely together, and sometimes moods and attitudes of parents and children get a little not where we wish they were. But overall, I think it's okay. Number one, it's a great place to teach your kids manners. So it's okay to correct them in that way. And number two, I think it's fine to sometimes say, hey, I think we're getting into something that let's talk about this later. Let's not do this right here at dinner time. Let's get back on track. It's okay to teach our kids that sometimes we do need to get our attitudes back on track, our conversations back where we want them to be, and there's a time and a place for things. And to not beat ourselves up when we have that dinner that does not go well. Because if you're doing it most nights out of the week, there's going to be dinners that are not your proudest moments. And that's okay. It's all part of family life.
It is part of family life. So let's take off for just a moment the cooking hat, and let's put on the mom boss hat. So you talked about you started blogging in 2008. I started around the same time, and it was this brand new Wild Wild West kind of platform. So when you launched eatatHomeCooks.com, did you expect it to become what it has? I mean, were you envisioning even back then being in the entrepreneurial and author space? What are you learning about the digital business these days?
Yeah, I did not expect it at all. I just started it. I had heard that you could pay for your groceries by blogging, and I wanted to know if that was true. It is. Yeah. That and a lot more. But yeah, it grew so much in ways that I never could have imagined back in 2008. It's become a really great platform for me to explore and be creative and try new things, all still while being available for my family. So yeah, I'm really thankful to be able to do it.
When did you start realizing that people were beginning to follow, that they were beginning to come along on the journey that you were recording and archiving in this blog format, to the point that you then realized, oh, this is a thing. Like this is going to be real.
Yeah, I think pretty early on, I realized that people were responding to the recipes. They were telling me that they were making them in their own kitchens and that they were sharing them. so pretty early on, I realized that this was meeting a need that people had. Now, it took me a while to figure out how to grow that into an actual business, and then for the timing of the cookbook to be right. Also, we're 10 years in now, so that took a while too.
Right.
But pretty early on, I realized that this was actually meeting a need. And so the whole time after that, it was just, okay, how can I grow this to meet the needs of more people? How can I hone it?
Right. And I think that's really important for listeners to understand, those who are interested in starting something that they're passionate about, that they feel like would meet a need, is that there's no overnight usually.
No.
I started blogging around the same time. My first book didn't come out until 2016, Raising an Original. It just takes a while. And if you're passionate about it and you're serving people well and you're serving something that people show that they have a need for, the thing I would tell myself now looking back is, hey, just lean into that and don't get so worried about so much of it. I mean, the timing of it, because it can just take a while. But I think it's a really amazing platform, particularly for women today, to be able to find. So how do you test drive? What's your process, both from mom perspective and business perspective, test driving these different recipes? How did you start realizing which ones you wanted to be in the book out of, the hundreds, or maybe not tens of thousands of meals that you've probably cooked at this point? When did you realize, okay, these are the ones, because you've got 101 simple recipes in your new book, Eat at Home Tonight, for readers. How did you hone it down to the 101?
Well, I really wanted these recipes to solve particular problems that we come into the kitchen with. So if you only have 15 minutes tonight, if your pantry is empty. So when I'm creating recipes, sometimes I put myself intentionally in the situation of walking into the kitchen at 5 o'clock, 5:30, and knowing my family is going to be in there in a few minutes wanting some dinner, and I have to just create it, because that's the situation that happens to us a lot. So we use common pantry ingredients, simple methods, simple recipes that you can get on the table quickly. So I don't want anything to be difficult to do on a weeknight. Even in the chapter, I've got a bit more time tonight, those are still really simple things, and for the most part, you can accomplish them in less than 30 minutes. A few take a little bit longer than that, but all very easy to do. I don't want people going to 5 and 6 stores to find an ingredient that they can't find.
Right. No, I think that's just brilliant. And I think it's brilliant in terms of your new cookbook. And I think it's also brilliant just for moms out there listening who are wanting to do something with what they're excited about. I love that you intentionally put yourself in the position a lot of moms find themselves in and troubleshot your way out, and then are able to communicate that so beautifully about how to then get a meal on the table. And I think for any of us who are wanting to serve within that digital space, to really put ourselves, okay, let's say I'm making earrings. How can I put myself in the place of someone that I can solve a problem for them? And hey, here's one. If you're out of time and you're needing to birthday shop for a friend, just hop on here and I've got a great option for you. I think that perspective, Tiffany, is just fantastic. I love that is the way that you approach this cookbook.
Yeah, I think in any business, if you can solve someone's problem, then you're going to have customers. You're going to have people who are going to love what you're creating, because you're helping them with what they need help with.
Oh, I love that. So what was it like going through the process of the photography and all of that for the recipes and food styling and all those things? Because I think we live in such an interesting, dichotomous kind of culture today. We want things to be beautiful and to be well presented, and yet we want everything to be real and raw and transparent. So
yeah.
Which is kind of a hard note to hit, right? So how did you go through that process of styling this and yet still making it feel very approachable for moms, instead of something like, oh, you can only do that if you're on ... chef's table?
Exactly. And yeah, having the photos be very approachable was a very big priority for me. First of all, it's beautiful because I did not do the photos. My photography is sometimes adequate. It's not the best. So we hired a food photographer who just did a wonderful job with the photos. And I made sure that she understood I wanted these to be very, very approachable. I wanted to open it and have it look very appetizing, but also extremely doable.
And what was it like seeing all of that come to life? I mean, these ideas that you had in your head, and now you've worked the recipes and you made sure they're working, and now you've got these images that tell the story of what you created.
It was amazing. They would send, I didn't get to go to the photo shoot. That was in New York, and I didn't go for that. But they would send the proofs back every evening of what they had shot that day. So I got to give a little bit of feedback on some of them. And then the editing made such a difference, too, when I got the final copy of the book and how it all looks together. It really came together very well. The images, a picture's worth 1,000 words and all that. It's really true. The photos make the book.
Right. Well, that is so exciting to get to see something that you've been working on for such a long time come to pass. How have you been able to maintain that really, I don't even think balance is a thing, right? So I'm not even going to say, I don't even know what I would call it. I'm going to say, so how do you, let's just put it this way. How do you keep mom hat on solidly while at the same time pursuing this dream that actually is a lot about mom life? And yet I know for myself, even when I'm trying to do stuff within the parenting space, I can be telling my kids, just go watch another movie while I finish this blog post or I finish this interview or whatever about parenting. So how are you able to accomplish some kind of healthy lane where, yeah, you are talking a lot about food and feeding your family well, and yet I've got to assume there've got to be some nights where you're really pulled away to go write and talk about all of that and maybe not actually get to the table with your family.
Yes, that does happen. There were nights when I was testing recipes and we would have 4 dinners because I had been busy in the kitchen and we had a lot of things to taste. And then there are nights where I walk into the kitchen and think, if only I knew somebody who did meal planning and weeknight dinner. Yeah, because it's hard. It's hard when you're working and you've got the family. I am in a position now where all of my kids they're over 18 except for that last one who's 15. And that's such a different place than when I started 10 years ago. And I had a 5-year-old.
Right.
There has been a transition where I've moved from primarily mom at home to primarily working mom. And that's probably like a whole nother podcast.
Yeah.
To say just that mental transition. It's a lot of giving ourselves grace when the thing that we're good at, the thing I'm good at is weeknight dinner. But honestly, there are nights that it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in the same way that I wish it would. You got to look at the big picture.
Right. And I think that big picture perspective is so important because, if our kids walk away from being raised in our homes, launched in our homes with the idea of, we often had great family meals. We circled up and did our thing. I think that's really beautiful. It's not necessarily that we have to be so granular that we have to hit it every single time. And, to that, one thing that we've learned as a family as the kids have, entered these different phases and different stages, sometimes we'll actually schedule Saturday brunch. And that seems to be a better way to get everybody to the table then. And we do it big. So, moms, give yourself a break out there. I mean, just see what really works during the week for your family and adjust and adapt as needed. And of course, Tiffany King's new book, Eat at Home Tonight, is a fantastic resource for making sure that you can do that. And you've got things right on hand that are not going to force you to go to 4 different grocery stores and have prep time that looks like what I usually try to do, which is something off of the cooking channel. You can find Tiffany at eatathomecooks.com. And while you're perusing the web, be sure and go to allmomdoes.com and allmomdoes on the socials, where you'll find a community of women in your season of life, raising kids, holding down the fort, and doing all the things. I'd love to connect with you. You can find me on the socials at Julie Lyles Carr. Donna Toady and Rebecca Beckett, our producer and our content coordinator, are the best. Let them know you appreciate them by subscribing and leaving us a 5-star rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you next time on the Modern Motherhood Podcast.